Alright, YouTube, it's another video. Just finished a good chest workout Monday, International Chest Day. Everyone's using the flat benches, so I did incline, decline, dumbbell bench, French press, it's like a skull crusher type thing, shoulder press, and a little bit of some cable tricep work. Pretty much called it a day. Still doing okay at the gym. It's the only thing I got going. I see a bunch of people, I do see a lot of younger people at this gym, and it is nice to feel good that I'm 31 and still outlift all of them. But that's going to change soon, I bet. Never took any steroid. The only thing I've ever taken is pre-workouts, creatine, a multivitamin, shit like that. Lots of water. Protein, of course, too. Anyway, this has been on my mind since I do a lot of late night drives. I do walks, trying to lose the beer gut. I call it a deadlift gut, but it's a beer gut too, although I don't drink a lot of alcohol anymore. But I just wanted to do a quick little talk about how I think both socialism and capitalism, especially on the internet with all these, leftist YouTubers and right-wing conspiracy theorists and everything. I'm not going to sit here and say they're both equally bad. I do think one is worse than the other. But they're both rooted in fear and not having fun. And this is kind of, been a comment to a bunch of my different videos before. And I've been trying to figure out, the best way to word this. And I know I'm not going to word it very well. But I don't see much of a difference between the two in terms of the motivation. Both this, free market plus conspiracy theory right wing and this everything is gone to shit because of the environment and land ownership on the left wing are both just, I think there's a valid point to environmental concerns on the left, but both of them are rooted in you should feel shitty, you should feel like you're not doing enough, you should feel pissed off all the time, you should feel like it's all doom. And I think we have enough doomer shit anyway, and I just think that both are rooted in what generates the most clicks, therefore ad revenue, therefore likes and retweets and subscriber counts. And both of those are, it's a bubble, right? It's no longer being used for its intended purpose. I do think both of these types of content have, goals in mind policy-wise, but I also think that the number one thing they care about is just, subscriber counts and Patreon dollars and shit, which, I would argue there's a little bit of a more hypocritical tendency on the left wing there, because that's kind of capitalism. But then I think the right wing just says probably dumber shit, where it's we know everything's a conspiracy, everything's, it's I can't stand that fucking shit. I mean, I do agree that I think some level of the right wing where there's a handful of people that definitely manipulate legislation or corporate control or both to get what they want. So you could call it a ruling elite, but I don't think that's anything new. I mean, we've known that for the dawn of time, dawn of organized civilization. So, I think that they go off the deep end on the right. But then the left seems to be very hypocritical, because they say they hate all things capitalism, and yet they definitely do more than they need to do to keep it afloat. Most of these leftist YouTubers that need, it's they have a lot of Patreon dollars. They have a lot of YouTube ad revenue. I mean, how much more do they, quote, need? Or people who say they hate capitalism, but, for example, I see, I go on speed dating events and I see a lot of women they're all left wing. And I sometimes I like that, but then they also they demand very right wing principles in the men they want to speed date or just go on dates with or marry or whatever. It's a conservative mentality to make sure your man is always moving up the corporate ladder and striving for more. Or, you want a man who's, slightly older than you. I mean, that's a conservative mindset. Um, I've asked out women older than me. I've asked out women younger than me, and both of them kind of, the younger ones definitely have a lot more, potential interest, while the older ones just kind of view me as a sweetie. And it's like, I'm 31. I mean, granted, this was when I was in my early 20s, and maybe a little bit in my mid 20s, pre-COVID, basically. Haven't really tried much since, at least when it comes to older women. I've gone on some speed dating events post-COVID, and it's, for the most part, been younger, I would think, or maybe about my age. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, I think that people don't understand that both capitalism and socialism, especially the YouTube version of it, and the discussion and the discourse and the zeitgeist, is just rooted in like pissing you off. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't stand for one. I lean left, but I'm not going to sit here and say, if you lean right, I'm not going to yell at you. I don't care enough to do so, because I'm not here to like yell and scream at people. If you're kind of like extremist where like everything's a conspiracy, I might be a little agitated towards that, because I think that's just really silly talk. But I just think that, but I will agree with some level of, I don't know if I'd say it's conspiracy, because like I said, it's kind of just been the gold standard since the dawn of civilization, that there's been a ruling class that kind of makes a lot of decisions, and they're kind of just doing a lot of this shit in front of your face. I mean, go look up some of the things that corporate, megacorps do to their workers, or megacorps influence public policy wise. Go look up decisions that the Supreme Court makes, or the Senate and the House and the Oval Office sign into laws. I mean, I don't know if I'd call that some sort of ruling conspiracy. I just call it like in your face. I think people they're too busy watching Netflix and Twitch streamers to really read the details, or not even read the details, or just like a skimming of the details. So yeah, I think that the goal should be a balance, right? I don't think all of profit making is evil, but I also think that, should Amazon's tentacles be wrapped around the earth like it is, And then of course, I don't think like all property is theft, like the left thinks, but probably there should be some sort of limit on what you can and cannot do with yours, to keep things normal. And I've always said that, like, a lot of people on the right hate property tax, but I mean, you guys complain about BlackRock buying up all the land. Imagine what they would do if they didn't have property taxes to worry about. You're thinking too short-sighted about your own lives. The government gives no fucks about your whatever $3,000 that you pay in property tax. I promise you that. So I think property tax actually helps out the little guy to some degree. I think the real ideal outcome for something like property tax would be, everybody's allowed to have one property that's registered in their name to not one per state or one, but just one per country. And then that piece of property might be a limited property tax, or maybe none. If it's valued at like $400,000 or $500,000 or less, you pay no property tax. And then anything over that might, have some sort of, substantial fee. It's kind of also why I think that, like, if you make $50,000 a year or less, this is going to sound libertarian to a degree, but if you make like $50,000 a year or less, I don't think you should pay any income tax at all. This country doesn't give a fuck about you. Why should you pitch into the country? I mean, you already don't pay much, though. I believe the $50,000 a year or less is, I think, 10%, but I even feel like that might be too high. So yeah, I think that both capitalism and socialism kind of need each other. Socialism, a large chunk of the fear they bring up is this fear of, of destruction and of hatred and bitterness. And some of that fear is rooted in reality, but a large chunk of it is magnified on the internet. And then of course, capitalism, what's funny about capitalism is you meet these very right-wing people who will say about how they feel like they've been left behind in society. And it's like, I don't know. I think that might be capitalism's fault more than socialism. I mean, if anything, socialism would kind of give them some level of a life preserver, tread water. But then again, I think you do need some level of that sort of a romance of, earning something of your own that capitalism provides. I don't think anybody truly wants a purely socialistic state. I think everybody would find qualms. I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, Does that mean we all are like registered? Like if you want to, get married, you get registered a wife or a husband because, we're all equal? I mean, we all know that the social world and the economic world are heavily linked. So, you can't just say, well, only economics are socialist. I mean, economic policy nowadays is also public policy, is social policy, is domestic policy, is foreign policy, you name it. Is the legalization of pot, is that an economic issue? Is that a social issue? Is it both? It's both. I mean, everything's more intertwined than ever due to the internet. And I would argue capitalism and socialism are more intertwined than ever by the same degree. Both of them are really just applied forms of human emotions. Capitalism is the applied form of kind of like a combination of self, like a self-sustaining, self-independence, but also kind of greed. And socialism is the sense of protection, and to some degree, protection, and also a bit of like, safety and protection are the same things, but a sense of comfort and ease. And you kind of need a mix of both. The older I've gotten, the more I probably have skewed a little more towards the center from the left, but I still think that we need to have some level of like protections on the economy. I was bringing this up to a friend of mine who's very capitalistic right wing, and he said that, he's like always talking about how he needs to, I need to do this, my kids. What about my kids? I don't want my kids left behind. And I say to him, like, no one cares about your dumb kids, laissez-faire, or also, if I want to sell crack rocks to your kids, I should be able to do that in the name of laissez-faire. And we all know that that's absolutely absurd. So I think everyone agrees that, to some degree of government regulation on the economy, but I guess maybe the discussion is to how much and what extent. So I get frustrated when people just say extreme, like polarization, like very absolute, what's that, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Well, the irony of that statement is always funny to me, but it's whatever. I don't know. So yeah, like, I know I'm speaking to the void here because I have no subscribers anymore. I had one, he left. It's almost like, I think like the YouTube algorithm was like, give him one subscriber and take it away because it's motivation. And it was like my first video. But yeah, I just want people to, just want to hear what they have to say. Is capitalism and socialism two sides of the same coin? Effectively. Do we need a mix of both? Are they both rooted in some degree of fear, especially in the internet age? It seems like they kind of are. Do young people care too much about politics now? I kind of feel like they might. Especially, we spent the past, I would say the aughts, like the early to mid 2000s was all about screaming to get youth involved with politics, even before you were 18. Like I remember when I was 15, 16, 17. Now this was late aughts, I guess. But yeah, this was about 07, 08. And but I remember even like when I was in middle school in like 2003-ish, people were talking about making, because 9/11 had just happened and everything. And people were talking about, getting the youth involved. And it's like, what am I supposed to fucking do? I'm 14. I'm worried about, what, am I going to get a PS3 or an Xbox 360? Or, that was a little bit later, but you know what I mean. So yeah, are the youth too involved in politics and not enough having fun? I strolled through the old mall that I walked, that I used to hang out at in the maybe like mid 2000s. It was already dying kind of then, but it was way better than it is now. I miss when malls had like more things, not to sound a little bit maybe sexist, but more things aimed towards men. We don't have, there used to be like Walden Books. That was like the very tail end of my mall days. We went out of business. Or, the game stores felt like they had less Funko Pop bullshit and more actual games. But then again, we don't really see a lot of releases anymore. The PS5 is how many years old, and I still think there's like 3 games worth of fuck. Kind of sad. It seems like to me the best era for quality and quantity was like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and 64. Yeah, there were new games every month that you kind of wanted to buy. But yeah, anyway, am I wrong to think that both capitalism and socialism nowadays are just, especially in the internet, are just rooted in fear and, making you feel like the world's out to get you? I don't know, I'm speaking into the void. No subscribers, no viewers. So anyway, just my thoughts, and I'm out.